Onward with part two, part B of Feed. Dead language. We were watching Marty invent a game called Struggle of the Dying Warrior. It involved him being tied with all of his limbs, like his arms and his legs, onto the frame of his bed with the rubber tubing. Then he tried to get up and walk. He was not getting very far. Violet and I were sitting on a bunk, swinging our legs in rhythm. We were talking about our families. I told her that I had a little brother. She said I hadn't mentioned him. I said he was a lot younger and a real pain. Violet asked me about my mom and dad. I told her that my dad did some kind of banking thing and my mom was in design. I didn't understand what my dad did exactly. Whatever it was, he was off doing it on the moon until tomorrow when they were going to tell us about our feeds. When I asked her what her dad did, she said, he's a college professor. He teaches the dead languages. People study that? She shrugged, I guess. Okay, so what are the dead languages? They're languages that were once important but that nobody uses anymore. They haven't been used for a long time, except by historians. Like what languages? You know, Fortran, Basic. Well, what does one sound like? She slid off the bunk and went to get her bag. She opened it and pulled out something, which was a pen. She also had paper. I looked at her funny. You write? I said, with a pen? Sure, she said, a little embarrassed. She wrote something down. She put the pad of paper on my lap. She asked me, do you know how to read? I nodded. I can read a little. I kind of protested it. Blah. I kind of protested it in school, trademark, on the grounds that the silent E is stupid. This is a language called Basic, she said. On the paper, it said, 02111, go to, peek, poke. She read it to me. I could tell the numbers fine. So what does that mean? I asked. It's the first thing my dad teaches the students on the first day, she said. It means I came, I saw, I conquered. Ooh, which is a reference to classical Latin. Huh. Neat. Sorry, guys. Pause. There, that's neat. So Latin is a dead language, as you know. And what's interesting is that's a famous phrase, I believe, from Caesar. I thought I came, I saw, I conquered. Originally, it was like Veni Vidi Vici, I think is what Veni Vidi Vici means. Anyway, really interesting. All right. I looked at her pen. You write all the time, I said, completely in awe. I've done it since I was little. Do you write stuff? Well, not stories or anything. I just write down things I see sometimes. On paper? Yeah. I looked at her. You're one funny enchilada, I said. She nodded real quiet. Doesn't your hand get all cramped up? I asked. Don't you end up like hook hand? I made a hook hand. She made a hook hand. We pawed each other with hook hand. She shook her head and smiled. I asked, why don't you use the feed? It's way faster. I'm pretentious, she said. Really pretentious. And pretentious, like, is when you're a little ego filled, like you're like, I'm a little better than everybody. Yeah, so the studio audience has noticed, but seriously. Suddenly, something occurred to me. I looked up at her. Marty had fallen to his knees and was being pulled backward toward the bed by the tubing. His cheeks were puffed out. His hands were in fists. His fingers were getting blue. All of the ridges on his arms stood out. Callista and Link were whistling with their fingers in their mouths. The other people in the ward were yelling, shut up! Would you all shut up? I asked Violet, your father, he's a college professor, but he was too busy to come see you after you like completely collapsed from a hacker attack. Too busy? She looked me in the eye. No, she said, but that's what I told you. Dun dun dun. Release. The salad days couldn't last forever. We really wanted to get back to Earth. Everyone wanted to forget how sucky the moon had been. Tuesday, just before lunch, a doctor and a policewoman and a technician came in. Our parents were all talking over in the corner. The rest of us were all sitting around talking about spaceship disasters. The technician called us all to attention and went through this whole thing. He was sorry for the delay, but they wanted to be absolutely sure there was no permanent hack, that our feeds were safe, etc. He was all like, da 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 da, must have been a difficult time for all of us, da 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 da. Da, 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 da. We would find our normal service resumed without interruption. Da, 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 da. He was meg sorry we had to go through this. And he complied with the police and handed over our data. Da, 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 da. Like, thank you all again for your patience. One by one, we went into the examination room. In there were nurses and the doctor and the technician. The nurses were watching the relays, our blood pressure and all. They were like, "Don't worry about anything. You'll feel it all coming back in a few seconds." The doctor touched a boot stick to my head. He said, "Okay, can we get a thingy, a reading on his limbic activity?" The boot stick was cold on my neck. I could feel the little hair standing up around it. There was some kind of static electricity. They moved the boot stick a little and say, "Remember, guys, there are words in here that we don't know." That he's like played with language throughout this book so far. All right. You should feel it now, said one of the nurses. I didn't feel anything. I looked around and they were watching me closely. No, I said. I shifted on the bed. I didn't feel anything. I said, nothing. I feel nothing. Hold your head still, said the doctor. He shifted the boot stick and it beeped again. I kicked my heels against the bed. There's nothing. Nothing, I said. Why don't you, said the nurse, pulse up, rising. Limbic activity okay? He's just nervous. Don't worry, it'll hit him in like a second. We have readings on engram formation. Signal engaged. Don't drop the exterior relays yet. The Ford Laputa, Sky and Suburb Monthly said there's no other up car like it, and we agree. There you go, said the nurse. You'll be more than a little attracted to its powerful TA44 Fermion lift with vertical rise of 50 feet per second. And if you like comfort, quality, and class, the supple upholstery and ergonomically designed dash will. They slapped me on the back. I laughed, and the doctor and I did these big grins. I went back out into the other room, and we were all starting to feel it now. We were all starting to feel it good. So the feeds are back on, right? Selling stuff. Whenever it's in italics, that's how the author is differentiated, like what's coming in the feed versus what they're saying. And if you've noticed too, since the feed left them, they stopped cussing so much. I don't know if you noticed. Like there wasn't like a ton early. Obviously, this book won a bunch of awards as part of vocabulary.com. But I think it's interesting as he's played with language, he's actually like increased the little bit that they've been off of the feed. If you've noticed, their conversation has actually gotten more elevated, better, smarter, more thinking for themselves. But now the feed's back on. All right. They slapped me on the back. I laughed at the doctor. I did this big grin. We were all starting to feel it good. Name is Terry Ponk. I'd like to tell you about upper body strength. And the feed was pouring in on us now, all of it, all of the feed net. And we could feel all of our favorites. And there were our files and our M chat lines. It came down on us like water. It came down like freaking spring rains, and we were dancing in it. In your absence, you may not have heard, hand in hand, we danced. That was the end of part 2. To come tomorrow, part 3, Utopia. Hopefully I can do that all in one sitting. I won't break it up. I hope you enjoyed. I'm really enjoying this so far. I wish we were in class to get your feedback in real time. We'll work on that. All right. Peace out.